Cardano has officially been deemed a commodity by the House of Representatives by them passing the FIT21 Crypto Bill the other day. Initially hearing this news, I was very excited, but then a lot of questions came into my mind. What exactly is the FIT21 bill? What is a commodity and security, and how is it defining those things? What does this mean for Cardano, and what does this mean for the price of ADA in the future, right? These are all things that I'm thinking about as I hear this news, and I want to just share my thoughts and what this bill is doing. So the FIT21 bill stands for, I actually wrote it down, it stands for the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century. So essentially what this bill is doing is it is bringing to light a new legislation for how cryptocurrency assets can be regulated by the government, managed by the government under certain jurisdiction to be a proper financial product. This is supposed to help investors, help normal retail people, and then provide a framework for what government is controlling what, right? This is specific for the United States, but the United States is falling behind in its legislation, so it's good to see this come through. Right now, the bill has passed the House. It's going to make its way to the Senate, so we'll see what happens when it gets to the Senate. But essentially what the FIT21 bill says is if you can prove that your cryptocurrency, one person does not control 20% or more of that cryptocurrency, whether it be by holding tokens or being a company that centralizes the control and controls it, if one person does not control 20% or more of that cryptocurrency, it's a commodity. If one person controls 20% or more of that cryptocurrency, then it's a security. If you're labeled a security, you're under the SEC's legislation. If you're labeled a commodity, you're under the CFTC's legislation, and the CFTC is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. I think right now we all know that Bitcoin is kind of under the CFTC. It's the only official commodity labeled. Everything else, including Ethereum and everything else, is kind of either unknown or labeled as security until this bill is passed and is recognized as a new law. And once that goes into effect, then essentially a majority of cryptos will still be securities, but we'll have a few come into the commodity category, and I want to talk about why I think Cardano is one of those cryptos. Based on the framework that this bill is putting forward, Cardano should be a commodity, and it should be a commodity because of the way it does staking, because of who's controlling the tokens and who's controlling the blockchain. One side note I want to talk about before we get into why it's a commodity is that Cardano still does have the 7 Genesis keys. Currently, like 5 are held by IOG and 2 are held by either Emergo or the Cardano Foundation. I think it's Emergo, but the IOG holds 5 out of 7 Genesis keys. This means they can do parameter changes to the blockchain. Think block sizes, think all these things. They don't have the ability to censor people or change things drastically, but they can make certain changes to the blockchain without a hard fork. A lot of small changes that don't require a hard fork, they can make changes too. So this 7 Genesis keys are going to be something that I'm really interested to see if that makes Cardano a commodity or a security. I don't think that they should make Cardano a security. I think that they should make Cardano a commodity, and once Voltaire is fully fledged out and the Genesis keys are destroyed anyways, Cardano will definitely be a commodity. The reason I highlight this is because I know some people are going to talk about it, and it's a good talking point. It's a good thing to question. Some people in legislation or in office might not really, it's not that they don't know, it's just it's so different. It's how do you recognize stake pools and delegators versus these Genesis keys? How do you recognize what they do? And to go to every crypto on a case-by-case basis is really hard to understand these different things. So I could see why Cardano would be a security based on having these Genesis keys. In a year, though, when the Genesis keys are destroyed, it's not going to matter anyway. So that's why Cardano is a commodity, and it is a commodity because of the way that staking is done, because of who's holding the tokens, because of the stake pool operators and the delegators, and the fact that even the Genesis keys cannot push a hard fork without the stake pool operators. These are the checks and balances Cardano has, and with those in place, Cardano has to be a commodity. It has to. It has a distributed ADA all over all 3,000 different stake pools where no single entity has 20% control. Charles Hoskinson doesn't have control. IOG, Emergo, and Cardano Foundation don't have control. The Binance stake pool or any of the stake pools don't have 20% control. You would have to be in charge of dozens of stake pools in order to have 20% control of the network, and the ADA is not centralized. The community is not decentralized. The tokenomics are not decentralized. Cardano is a commodity by all other standards besides those initial Genesis keys, which still cannot push a hard fork and cannot censor or change the blockchain at a base level without stake pools adopting it. I think this is really, really good news for Cardano because its core focus is decentralization. I think Cardano wants to be a commodity. It wants to be one of the more decentralized chains, and it's one of the core pillars of what it's trying to do, especially with governance this year. So I think this bill is very, very solid for Cardano, and I think putting Cardano into the commodity category will just help highlight its strength, right? For the ADA price, immediately, I don't think anything's going to happen. I think, this bill still got to get past the Senate. It's still got to become a law. All these things still have to happen for immediate price action. But I think we've seen what's happened to Bitcoin as it's become a commodity. Nothing really happens on the day it becomes a commodity, but long term, it lets other people invest into it. Larger institutions, larger funds, it gives it more validity, right? All of these things are good for the crypto industry. So I think long term, Cardano is a commodity, and long term, people want to invest in commodities. They want to invest in an asset that has a certain level of decentralization. And I think Cardano and the ADA price will get highlighted because of that. Long term, I think ADA, I'm talking, this year and next year, and maybe even next cycle in 5 years, Cardano will be highlighted for its decentralization as a commodity, by larger institutions or larger investors and other things like that. So I think this is a good thing for Cardano. I don't think we're going to see any immediate crazy price action, but long term, I think the price will be benefited by this legislation. The next biggest thing that needs to happen is for this bill to go to the Senate, to be approved by the Senate or rejected by the Senate. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I think with this bill being passed by the House, even if the FIT21 bill is denied by the Senate, the crypto industry still has a lot more insight as to what the government in America is thinking, what kind of metrics we need to aim for, what goals different cryptos need to have, whether they want to fit into the commodity or the security category. Neither one of these categories is good or bad. It's just different. It's a different type of asset. It's a different type of reason to be around. And so I think this is a great thing for all of crypto to have a certain type of framework as to what to be achieving for based on what goals they desire. And I think for Cardano, Cardano specifically wants to be a commodity. It wants to be in the same kind of class as Bitcoin, and it wants to be sort of a decentralized asset that everyone kind of recognizes. So I think long term, this is very good for Cardano. I think long term, this bill is very good for crypto, just so we can know what is going on and what's happening. I'd be curious to know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Cardano is a commodity or a security based on this? Really, I think right now I could see both things happening because we do have the Genesis keys intact. But I'd be curious to know your thoughts. Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. Commodity or security? What do you think about ADA? Do you think this affects price long term? I think it does. Maybe not immediately, but down the road, I think it does, especially if this legislation goes through the Senate and gets passed into law. All right. Other than that, we'll see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know in the comments. See ya.